Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica, and even another episode in our Atomiswave to Dreamcast port series. At this point in time, I was looking at the release chart. We have about 75% of all the Atomiswave games over to Dreamcast. We're just missing some light gun ones. But today we're taking a look at King of Fighters Neowave. And this is one of my favorite King of Fighters games that isn't a numbered release. And I remember back in the day when the original Xbox had this game, I played it a ton online. And the night before Xbox Live servers went down for the original Xbox, I got a match with somebody from the NeoGeo.com forums. We probably played for like 6 hours, just getting the last little bit of Neowave in possible. So I definitely really enjoyed this game, and I've owned it on Xbox since it originally came out. But now having it available for the Dreamcast is definitely awesome because I much prefer my Dreamcast arcade stick or an Xbox One controller, emulated as I'm capturing it here, than I do using the original Xbox controller. It's just not really something I prefer. But if you've ever played a King of Fighters game before, Neowave's going to feel very familiar because it is just the traditional King of Fighters formula. You have a couple different options when you're selecting your characters, what sort of mechanics you want to use, but it's still going to be your 3 versus 3 round-based fighting game. And you can never go wrong with that. I just absolutely love this series. I own King of Fighters 94 through 2003 on the Neo Geo AES. Took me a long time and a lot of money to collect all of those. And there isn't a game in the series that I have not played at least once, and I definitely own all of them. So being able to play this on the Dreamcast is super fun from this kind of a experience standpoint, but it's definitely not something I needed to be ported. But for a lot of people who don't own an original Xbox One, actually not Xbox One, the original Xbox, they get so confusing with those naming schemes. I don't know why Microsoft insists, even I'm losing track of which Xbox I'm talking about. If you've never played the game before, it's going to be a lot cheaper to play it on Dreamcast than it is on the original Xbox because you can just download the file and throw it on your optical disc emulator or emulate it in Demio like I am doing here. And some of the releases have had a few glitches in them where you can't finish them or they do freeze, but I will say King of Fighters Neowave I was able to play from start to finish on my Dreamcast and optical disc emulator and under emulation as well, and I had absolutely zero problems whatsoever. So this is one of those games that you're going to just be able to go from the beginning to the end with no issues whatsoever, compared to one of the Guilty Gears where every time I had to continue the game froze and you'd have to beat it from start to finish. But as far as the game is concerned, SNK makes incredible fighting games. They always have, they've been known for it, and King of Fighters is my favorite series from them, with Fatal Fury being a very close second. But this has all the things I want in a King of Fighters game. You have beautiful 2D sprites, you've got great backgrounds, excellent fighting mechanics, everything you're looking for is here. If I did have to say one negative about Neowave is compared to some of the other games like 11 on Dreamcast, the backgrounds aren't as interesting. You have the ship in the corner here, bobbing up and down slightly, but otherwise, most of the backgrounds are pretty static on most stages, and I kind of wish they had gone a little bit further on the game, because this definitely feels like something that could run on the Neo Geo AES or MVS. Maybe the resolution's a touch higher, but this really isn't showing off what the Atomiswave Dreamcast or for the Xbox port, what the hardware really could do. But for the longest time, until we got to some of the newer Roman numeral based games from SNK and the King of Fighters series, they really didn't change the sprites that much. They were constantly reusing them, and I really can't blame them because they do look great for the time and place they were made, so I would definitely have reused them too. But this is when King of Fighters maybe started feeling slightly stale and looking for a revamp that we definitely did end up getting on the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and King of Fighters 15 is really soon to come out. So this feels kind of like the last game in the older SNK King of Fighters series, right before they started to pivot to something new. Like I said, it's not to say that it's not a good game. I absolutely love it, and playing this with friends is great, but it definitely, when it came out, kind of felt like, alright, this is still really fun, but what are you going to do next, SNK? But having it on the Dreamcast is great, and all these conversions have been absolutely spectacular. Thanks to MegaVolt 85 for doing all of this. To date, he hasn't done any of the, I use the word ports, but really they're just conversions or side loads of the code. There haven't been any light gun games out, and I'm really looking forward to seeing if we get those because it's one of my favorite arcade genres, but I understand that it's a little more difficult to port something over when the controls aren't just your traditional JAMA style setup where you have buttons and directional input. So hopefully we see those soon, but otherwise we still have a ton of games that have come out for Dreamcast. I'm shooting this and recording it in November. I probably won't put this video out till January, so it will be a bit old, but I can barely keep up with making them. And the reason I make them is is because, you know, MegaVolt 85 deserves a lot of credit for being able to do something like this. It's just great when these projects happen. I mean, I've ported a few things from the arcade M2 over, and I've made some demo discs and released some software for maybe, you know, 20 to 30 people that have that hardware. But for somebody to go and do something on a console that's in the millions to bring the library up by 15 games at this point in time, that's just spectacular, and it makes Dreamcast feel like it has a brand new lease on life. And because so many of the Atomiswave games are great, they're not all great, I'll be making fun of at least one coming up in the future, it's just awesome to have all of these games. What I'll let you do is watch the next bout without me talking, because I do love the music and sound effects of King of Fighters, and I'll be back in about a minute to close the video out. Otherwise, enjoy this. So what I do appreciate about Neowave is it went back to the classic 3-on-3 bout tournament system, where something like 11 had the tag system where you could change characters mid-battle, and while that was fun when it came out, I do still just prefer 3 characters, 3 opponents, and fighting from there. They did increase the setup to have a 5th button, your heat gauge, where your characters are going to flash red and get more powerful, and honestly, at this point at least, I forget to use that because I'm so familiar with the MVS and AES games and the 4-button setup, I kind of forget to actually use that, but it is a nice mechanic. But in the break between doing the first bit of audio and this one, I did look up and see what these games are going for, and it looks like the Xbox version is like $80 now, and I definitely do not recommend spending that, and the Japanese PlayStation 2 version is like $20. Or you could just put it on your optical disc emulator on your Dreamcast and play it, no big deal, and enjoy it exactly the way it was intended, because this is the arcade release just running on a Dreamcast. But that's King of Fighters Neowave. It's a super awesome game from SNK, and they make great fighting games. It's rare for them to have one that I don't like, except for Neo Geo Battle Coliseum, and I'll talk about that eventually, or maybe I already have. I never really keep track of what schedule I'm going to put these videos up on. But if you have any questions or any comments, leave them down below. I love chatting with you guys, and now that we're at the boss stage, you're going to see me completely get my butt handed to me, because in traditional SNK fashion, beating the boss takes at least a few continues. But short of that, we will have more videos in the Atomiswave to Dreamcast release series as they come out, and we'll have regular videos on Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday as well. But if you could do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, ring that notification bell. And if you feel so inclined, we got a Patreon link down there as well if you want to support the channel. Short of that, that's King of Fighters Neowave. We hope you enjoyed it, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.